Clan Hell's Horses loves their tanks. They love them so much, in fact, that they decided to make their mechs into tanks. Today on the Mech Lab, we'll be covering Quadvees, which is one of the most underutilized types of mech in the game, and I think might be one of the strongest. So why don't we see these excellent units being used more? Well, there's a number of reasons. For one thing, they don't come around until the 3100s, so pretty much the Ill Clan era is when these are actually being used in large numbers, and on top of that, their transformation equipment costs a lot of tonnage, meaning that they have less space and less tonnage for weapons and armor. However, the bonuses that you get are definitely worth it. What are those bonuses? Well, first of all, they get all of the bonuses that a quad mech gets because they are essentially a quad mech with wheels or tracks attached to the legs. Firstly, we have the ability to sidestep. So you can move into the hex in front of you on either side for only 2 movement points while maintaining the same facing. So it's more efficient to do it this way. If you wanted to, say, get around this forest, you can sidestep and then run straight forward. If we wanted to turn and move like so, it would cost us 1 extra movement point. What this means is that you can shift your hex row while also maintaining great forward momentum. So with a 5/8 movement profile, you can still keep that 3 TMM despite having to get around a piece of terrain. This is especially relevant in cities where you don't want to be turning on pavement because it will force a PSR to stay standing. Which brings us to our next benefit. All quad mechs, while they have 4 legs, get a -2 to all PSRs. Now this does not apply to melee attacks, unfortunately, but it does make quad mechs very difficult to knock down, meaning that you can also dump their piloting skill because they're so likely to remain standing. Now, speaking of melee attacks, you can make a melee attack into the rear arc space. So if I wanted to kick the Boreas here, I could face this direction if I wanted to. I'd be giving up my rear arc, but it is very useful for when enemies decide to try and get behind you. Now, speaking of enemies getting behind you, probably the greatest benefit Quadvees have is that they have a turret. Their entire torso is treated as a tank turret, meaning that you can torso twist and fire directly behind you if you want to. This is obviously very useful for when light mechs try and get behind you, or if you wanted to face your front to, say, an enemy that was standing over here. Meanwhile, the Boreas, having just a Hag 20, is less likely to fire on you than something over in this area. Next, let's get into what benefits the vehicle mode offer you. If you have wheeled movement, it increases your base movement points while in your vehicle mode by 1. This is incredibly powerful because it doesn't cost you any additional battle value. What does this mean? Well, it means that you can get extra TMM for no additional defensive battle value costs. The Boreas here is a 4/6 mover. If we swap it from tracked to wheeled, you'll see at the bottom there is no increase in battle value, but now in our wheeled movement profile, we have 5/8, meaning that we can get to 3 TMM, meaning that this highly armored unit can get extra defense for no cost. It also allows you to move 1 faster on roads, which is incredibly useful if you're trying to get across a very large map. Or, for campaign strategic reasons, you can move along roads much more quickly than a normal mech could. Speaking of campaigns, these units can fold up and turn into basically a tank, so that means that they're much more compact and easier to transport on a dropship or a train. And as you can see when we go over to the Notos here, you can get a lovely 6/9/12 movement profile with your supercharger active while in that vehicle mode and roll up on people with some medium pulse lasers at a speed that they did not think you were capable of. Now, swapping over to Mega Mech, I just wanted to show you the results of the melee phase. I did indeed kick directly behind me. We both hit each other. Skipping into the next movement phase, we have the convert mode button here. This turns me into my vehicle mode. It's going to cost me 2 movement points as I start moving forward, but now I have a 6/9 movement speed. While transformed, you are also treated as being 1 tall, just like a tank, meaning that you can hide behind 1 high hills very easily, but it does come with a downside. You are treated as being 1 level level lower for being kicked, meaning that enemy units kick you on the punch table. Next, let's look at the hit location table, because this is a very significant increase in survivability for any quad mech. So right arm on 3 and 4, and left arm on 10 and 11. And then you have left leg on 9 and right leg on 5. Normally, biped mechs get a very big defensive boost from standing behind one high hills. Because your legs are covered, they cannot be shot. Because the legs are treated as arms on the hit location table for quad mechs, this means that you have an over 50% chance of enemies' shots just doing absolutely nothing to your quad mech. Now, this is especially good for quad mechs because they can't torso twist, so they like to just fire at things directly in front of them. But with the ability to hide behind one high hills while in vehicle mode and then pop up in mech mode to fire, I think that the Quadvee has even more shenanigans that it can get into with one high hill cover manipulation. Finally, all quad mechs can go prone and fire at enemy targets with no penalties to their hit rolls. This is extremely useful, especially if you can find some heavy woods or even just light woods and hunker down there. You are a lower target, meaning that you're harder to hit for enemies, but you suffer no penalties yourself. On top of that, quad mechs, as long as they have all of their legs, don't need to make a PSR to stand up. They just do it automatically. Even if your mech is just out in the open and you want to run and then go prone to get 3 TMM plus the penalties to enemy fire because you're prone, you can do that, and basically you're going to be treated as being in cover for their firing, which is very powerful. In a 2d6 system, even one extra point can skew that from, say, a 9 or a 10 to hit to a 10 or 11, and it makes the return enemy fire much less likely to hit you. A couple of other things I want to point out. They've got conversion gear and their wheels or tracks in their legs, so this does take up all of their leg slots and does take up some tonnage, so that's one big downside to these units. However, through armor critical gyro hits are some of the things that can really mess up a mech and put them out of the fight early. You can't do that to a Quadvee, because if the gyro goes out, they can just turn into a vehicle and still move around normally as a tank. And vice versa, if you get a critical on their conversion gear, their wheels, whatever, and start taking away their vehicle movement points, they can just stand back up and fight as a mech. And unlike a biped mech, where if you lose one leg, you're immobilized, you only lose one movement point for losing a leg on a quad mech, which is extremely powerful. It means that these units are very, very difficult to immobilize and keep from either performing an objective task or escaping from the battlefield. On top of this, you see that it has a special Quadvee cockpit. What this means is that it has 2 pilots, meaning that this unit is also less vulnerable to head hits, and having one of those pilots fail their test to stay awake. Now, if one of the pilots is passed out, the unit does take some penalties depending on which one, the driver or the gunner, was knocked unconscious, but it's better for your mech to be semi-functional than completely passed out and lying on the ground vulnerable. I made a video on tripod mechs a while ago, and you can go check that out. Basically, the Triskelion is the only tripod mech that isn't a super heavy. I will note that the 2-pilot system in Quadvees is worse than the tripods for whatever reason. I don't know why. There's no piloting or gunnery bonuses associated with having 2 pilots. You just have extra resilience in that you're less likely to get knocked unconscious. Now, as I've mentioned, there are downsides. Especially with the wheeled motive type, you're looking at a very large investment of tonnage of 10% of your mech. Again, it also takes up 8 total critical slots, which on a quad mech is a lot. We don't have arms to put criticals into here, so we have a very limited amount of space to put things into. Now, this does have a side benefit because clan mechs are usually extremely battle value heavy, so having something that takes up a bunch of your tonnage and forces you to have a cheaper unit is actually not that bad. And quad mechs can have more overall armor because they have 4 legs instead of 2 legs and 2 arms. You can strap a lot more armor on, you have much more structure to deal with, and unlike the very optimized quad mechs, which usually use a quad mech turret to allow 360 torso twist for their weaponry, you can spread out all of the weapons in the center torso and the 2 side torsos so that you're not completely cooked if you lose one of your side torsos. Although I will note that losing a side torso as a quad mech does result in you losing 1 leg, which is definitely very detrimental, but it doesn't mean that you're completely out of action. Again, you can still just either transform into vehicle mode or walk away from the battlefield at -1 movement point to escape or to complete some objective that needs to be done. Also, another downside obviously is that you can't have hands and arms, which means no punching, and also no picking up loot with your hands and arms and running away with it. Now, the Notos is one of the most optimized cannon versions of a Quadvee, carrying a bunch of medium pulse lasers on a 360 turret with a targeting computer and a supercharger to let it zoom real quick. It does end up costing a lot of battle value, but I like the Notos Prime a lot. I think that it's very powerful. Let's look at a couple of other variants of the Notos that are noteworthy. The Notos C does not have that supercharger, but it does have a nice spread of close-range weapons. 2 improved heavy-medium lasers, 3 SRM-6s, 2 AP Gauss rifles, and a tag for guiding in missile fire, as well as an active probe and an ECM suite, make this a decent heavy scout with some good backstabbing potential, especially because it can run behind enemies and then torso twist 360 to fire its weapons backwards, and can even do the mule kick, so it can run behind enemies much more effectively than some other designs in this speed class. Then we've already looked at the Prime, but then we've got the B here, which is a more long-range fire support unit. 2 ER medium lasers means that it can fire at that range 10 very effectively, and then 2 LRM-15s can engage at all ranges, but are very good at that range 14. Plenty of armor on this one, although I would have liked to see case 2 on here to protect the ammo bins. All of these units have 24 armor on all of their legs, meaning that it's very hard to take away their mobility, and 21 on the side torsos and 30 on the CT is very solid armor overall. I've played against the Notos, and it is a real pain in the butt to try and take out. Next, we have the Boreas, which uses tracked movement, so it doesn't have any additional movement bonuses, but I really would like to see a wheeled version of this unit because it gets that 5/8 movement profile for no battle value. That would be so powerful. So we got the Boreas A, just a long-range support unit, just a Hag 20, 12 shots for it. So it's bringing that heavy firepower from long range. This is where we see one of the weaknesses of Quadvees displayed. It doesn't have any tonnage left over for any backup weapons, and it's a little bit slow overall, and even has a little bit less armor than its faster compatriot. This is because it has a standard engine, so losing those side torsos is pretty bad for a Quadvee already. I like having XLs in a Quadvee because once you lose the side torso, it's not exactly cooked, but it's pretty close to being there anyways. You're probably best off to just like go prone and then fire from a distance. So having the Hag 20 is nice, but losing that right torso is going to disable the mech anyways. The Boreas C has a little bit more in the way of flexibility. We have 3 tons of ATM ammo, so you can get some ER ammo, and then I'd probably go with like either 1 ton of each or maybe 2 tons of standard and 1 of HE. It more so wants to close than its cousin, the Boreas A, because of the power of those ER medium lasers. Finally, we have the Harpagos. This is the big boy of the Quadvees, and it brings the big boy weapons as well. It has 2 Gauss rifles, 12 rounds of ammunition for each Gauss rifle. This is just a really good sniper. It can make very good use of 1 high cover, protect all of those legs, and just make it so that about half of the attacks that shoot at you just do nothing, while bringing to bear 2 lovely big Gauss rifles, punching big holes in enemies from very far away. Pretty reasonable battle value for something with 2 head cappers with the long range that the Gauss rifle has. 1721 is not cheap, but for a well-armored, reasonably mobile clan mech with big, heavy, long-range firepower and absolutely no heat issues, the Harpagos is quite good. So, to summarize, Quadvees are excellent at exploiting roads. It's very hard to remove mobility from them. They have good durability and great utility from being a quad mech, especially in boosting their own defenses, either with 1 high hills or by firing while prone with no penalties. And they get a 360 turret and a second pilot for no battle value cost, and you can dump piloting with them because they get a -2 to all of their PSRs as long as they have 4 legs. So I think that the benefits far outweigh the negatives, but the question is a Quadvee a better unit than a biped mech or a tripod? I think that it beats out a biped mech. It has a 360 turret, it loses out on punching, but it has all those defensive benefits, which are excellent. I don't think that it's better than a tripod. If you go and mess with tripod tripods in Mega Mech Lab, you can see that they are completely busted, but it could be argued that the Quadvees simply hasn't been exploited correctly. We have here a Nodos that I have down-tonned to 55 tons and given that lovely wheeled movement with a 6'9 movement profile, 7'11 movement speed with the wheeled movement. This is 4 TMM for free. There's no cost associated with this. You just start in wheeled mode and cruise around at 7'11, getting that 4 TMM, paying no defensive battle value. Now this is a little bit undergunned, obviously, because of the tonnage requirements, but this is still a super nasty backstabber, and it's going to be extremely hard to bring down. So is the Quadvee better than a tripod? It really depends on what you need it for, in my opinion, and how well you optimize the design. Let me know if I missed anything in the comments. Leave a like down there while you're at it, and subscribe. Really helps out the channel. Thank you so much for watching, everyone, and have yourselves a great day.